Shadow Slave. Imagine being pulled into a world where survival isn't just a choice, it's your only option. Where danger lurks around every corner, and even your greatest strengths might not be enough. Welcome to Shadow Slave, a dark fantasy web novel by Guilty 3 that will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you're looking for a novel that combines dark fantasy, survival, and an unforgettable underdog protagonist, Shadow Slave by Guilty 3 is a must-read. The story follows Sunny, a cynical young man living in the slums of a dystopian world, who gets thrust into the deadly dream realm by the mysterious nightmare spell. This realm is filled with unimaginable dangers, grotesque monsters, and life-threatening trials. Those who survive become awakened, gaining supernatural powers, but Sunny starts at a disadvantage. His aspect, Temple Slave, seems utterly useless, and he begins his journey shackled and freezing in a caravan of slaves. What makes Shadow Slave stand out is its gripping storytelling and the depth of Sunny's character. He's not your typical hero, sarcastic, pragmatic, and endlessly resourceful. He uses his wit and quick thinking to turn the odds in his favor, even when the situation seems hopeless. The world building is another highlight. Guilty 3 paints a vivid picture of both the dystopian society Sunny comes from and the surreal, ever-shifting landscapes of the dream realm. The system of powers, including aspects and attributes, is intricately designed and adds a layer of strategy to the narrative. The action sequences are intense and masterfully written, especially Sunny's confrontation with the terrifying Mountain King. What really sets this novel apart, though, is the way it blends high-stakes survival with themes of morality, resilience, and the complexities of human nature. Sunny's journey from a powerless slave to a determined survivor is both thrilling and thought-provoking. It's a story about adapting to harsh realities, finding strength in unexpected places, and challenging the odds at every turn. Whether you're a fan of dark fantasy, complex characters, or just a good underdog story, Shadow Slave is a novel that will keep you hooked from the first chapter to the last.
Spoiler alert! I've now shared my review of the novel. Up next, I'll be giving a brief summary of the free chapters. If you don't want to encounter spoilers, this is your cue to stop watching and head over to the official site to read the novel for yourself. The link to the official site is in the description. Thanks for watching. Alert!
Sunny sat on a rusty bench across from the police station, clutching a cup of real coffee, a rare indulgence for someone like him. The brew wasn't the synthetic junk he was accustomed to, but genuine plant-based coffee, the kind reserved for the upper echelons of society. It had cost him almost everything he had, yet he couldn't resist the splurge. After all, it might be the last luxury he'd ever experience. Taking a tentative sip, he immediately grimaced. "Ugh, so bitter," he muttered, glaring at the cup as though it had betrayed him. Yet he forced himself to drink more, determined to get his money's worth. Should have bought real meat instead. Who knew the fancy stuff tasted so disgusting? Across the street, wealthy citizens in pristine suits hurried past, casting judgmental glances at him. His pale complexion, dark-circled eyes, and cheap clothing made him an unwelcome sight in this district. Tossing the empty cup toward the trash bin, missing entirely, he sighed, retrieved it, and disposed of it properly before entering the police station. The officer at the desk barely looked up. "Are you lost, boy?" Sunny shook his head. "I'm here to surrender. I'm infected with the nightmare spell." The words struck the officer like a thunderclap. He froze, then reached for an alarm. "Code black in the lobby," he bellowed. Chaos erupted. Sunny was restrained and transported to a fortified room in the station's basement. The room, with its reinforced walls and vault door, was clearly designed for dire situations like this. Strapped into a contraption that resembled both a hospital bed and a torture device, Sunny yawned, his exhaustion evident. An older officer entered, his gray hair and stern eyes hinting at a lifetime of battles. "What's your name?" "Sunless," Sunny replied with a smirk. "Born during a solar eclipse. My mom had a poetic streak." The officer regarded him with a mix of curiosity and sympathy, but got straight to the point. "Listen carefully. When you fall asleep, the nightmare spell will transport you to your first nightmare. It's a trial, not an execution, though for someone in your circumstances, it won't be easy. Survive, and you might awaken with miraculous powers. Fail and you'll unleash a nightmare creature into the real world. Try not to die, kid. Sonny tried to stay awake, but the weight of exhaustion was insurmountable. His eyelids drooped as the officer's voice faded. The darkness engulfed him, and an eerie voice echoed. In his mind, aspirant. Welcome to the nightmare spell. Prepare for your first trial. The slave caravan. Sonny woke to a chilling vision of a jagged mountain bathed in pale moonlight. Time seemed to reverse, the snow retreating to reveal bones littering the ground. A slave caravan materialized, its prisoners shackled and dragging themselves along an ancient road. Sonny found himself among them, his feet raw and bleeding from the frozen ground. His wrists burned where the iron shackles dug into his skin. The caravan's guards, clad in archaic armor, patrolled on horseback, their cold eyes scanning the chain of captives. Ahead of Sonny trudged a broad-shouldered man with a bloodied back. Behind him, a shifty-looking figure muttered curses under his breath. Sonny tried to make sense of his situation. First nightmares were supposed to offer aspirants a semblance of agency, a chance to fight and survive. But starting as a powerless slave in the freezing cold? This felt more like a death sentence. He focused on his surroundings, willing the shimmering runes of the spell's interface to appear. The ancient symbols materialized before his eyes, their meaning clear despite the unfamiliar script. Name, Sunless. Rank, Aspirant. Aspect, Temple Slave. Attributes, Fated, Mark of Divinity, Child of Shadows. Sonny's heart sank. A Temple Slave? What kind of useless aspect was that? The description confirmed his fears. A temple slave is a useless wretch with no skills or abilities. Worth mentioning. Before he could process the implications, the caravan stopped, and the guards began herding the slaves into a tight circle on a rocky clearing. The biting wind howled, and the slaves huddled together for warmth. Sonny found himself on the outer edge, shivering uncontrollably. Nearby, a scholarly-looking man with a dignified air whispered warnings to the shifty slave about the poisonous red berries growing along the path. The fire offered little comfort, and Sonny's mind wandered to the vision he'd seen earlier, bones buried beneath the snow. Whatever had killed those slaves was still out there, and he had a sinking feeling it was drawing closer. The Mountain King. A thunderous crash shattered the uneasy stillness. Sonny's head snapped up as shards of ice and rock rained down from above. The slaves screamed, chaos erupting as they stumbled over the chains binding them together. Amid the cacophony, a monstrous figure descended, landing with a bone-jarring thud. The creature stood over 4 meters tall, its hunched form covered in yellowish-gray fur thick enough to repel weapons. Long multi-jointed limbs ended in claws sharp as swords, and its 5 milky white eyes stared blankly at the panicked slaves. Beneath the fur, worm-like shapes writhed grotesquely. Sonny froze, his mind racing. This was no ordinary nightmare creature. It had the aura of a tyrant, a being far beyond the strength of anything that should appear in a first nightmare. The monster lunged, its claws slicing through the broad-shouldered slave in front of Sonny. Blood sprayed as the man's lifeless body collapsed, dragging Sonny down with it. Gritting his teeth, Sonny scrambled to free himself, wrapping the chain around the creature's limbs in a desperate attempt to immobilize it. "Pull the chain," he shouted to the other slaves. The shifty man and the scholar hesitated but complied, their combined efforts tightening the bindings. The monster thrashed, its claws inches from Sonny's face, but the chain held firm. With a final surge of strength, Sonny pulled the chain taut, leveraging his entire body against the creature. The monster's struggles grew weaker until, at last, it went limp. A voice rang in his mind, "You have slain a dormant beast, Mountain King's larva." Broken chains. Sonny collapsed, his chest heaving. The victory felt hollow, the nightmare was far from over. Around him, corpses littered the ground, and the chain binding the slaves had broken in places. Some captives had fled, but Sonny knew better. Without the bonfire's warmth, they'd freeze to death before sunrise. As he caught his breath, movement caught his eye. The bodies of the fallen began to convulse, transforming into smaller versions of the monstrous tyrant. The shifty slave cursed, and the scholar paled as the new creatures rose, their claws glinting in the firelight. Before Sonny could react, a figure darted past him. It was the young soldier who had earlier offered him water. With graceful precision, the soldier dispatched one of the larvae with a Single strike, then tossed something to Sunny, a key. Save yourself, the soldier shouted before diving back into the fray. Sunny fumbled with the key, unlocking his shackles. Free at last, he quickly released the
other 2 slaves.
The shifty man celebrated wildly, while the scholar remained composed. His gaze fixed on the battle raging around the bonfire.
What now? Sunny asked. We stay. The scholar replied.
Without the fire, we'll die in the cold. The shifty man protested but stayed put, fear keeping him tethered to the relative safety of
the group.
Sunny, however, wasn't content to wait for death. Clenching his fists, he turned toward the monstrous tyrant still wreaking havoc near the bonfire. I'm not dying here,
he muttered.
And with that, he stepped into the shadows, ready to face the nightmare head-on, the tyrant's gambit. Sunny stood frozen, the cold wind biting into his exposed skin.
The Mountain King, a
monstrous tyrant, loomed before him, a creature of immense size and grotesque
proportions.
Its milky eyes betrayed no emotion as it crushed yet another slave under its
claws.
Sunny, despite being woefully underprepared, had no choice but to confront this
abomination.
Death awaited him whether he faced the creature or ran from it. Only one path offered the slimmest chance of survival. The bonfire crackled weakly nearby, casting eerie shadows over the blood-soaked ground. Most of the caravan was already dead, their bodies littering the stone platform. The guards, though brave, were no match for the beast. A young soldier, a rare flicker of hope amidst the carnage, lunged at the Mountain King, his sword gleaming as it slashed across the
monster's fur.
The blade slid harmlessly off, failing to pierce its tough hide. Sunny's mind raced. He had no special powers, no weapons to fight with.
His body
trembled, not from fear, but from the icy wind and exhaustion. He glanced toward the cliff edge and an idea sparked. If he couldn't kill the Mountain King, he'd let gravity do it for him.
Come with me,
Sunny shouted to the 2 remaining slaves, Shifty and Scholar.
The 2
hesitated, fear etched across their faces, but followed nonetheless. Perhaps they mistook his calm demeanor for confidence, or divine inspiration. Sunny led them to a heavy wagon, perched precariously near the edge of the cliff. We're going to use this, Sunny said, pointing to the wagon. When I give the signal, remove the wedges under the wheels and push with all your strength.
Shifty gawked. Are you mad?
What good will that do? Scholar, though skeptical, nodded. I see what he's planning. Sunny didn't bother explaining further. He sprinted back to the carnage, scanning the ground
for what he needed, the chain.
Finding its broken end, he fashioned a crude noose using a pair of discarded shackles. All the while, the young soldier, Hero, as Sunny dubbed him, fought valiantly, distracting the tyrant with a series of daring strikes and acrobatic rolls.
Now, Sunny shouted.
Shifty and Scholar pushed the wagon. It groaned under their efforts, rolling inch by agonizing
inch toward the cliff.
Meanwhile, Sunny hurled the chain with all his might. His aim was true.
But luck had other plans.
Instead of landing around the Mountain King's legs as intended, the chain looped around its thick neck, tightening like an iron collar. Sunny froze in disbelief, then grinned. That works too. Hero, understanding the plan instantly, redoubled his efforts. The Mountain King, confused by the sudden weight pulling at its neck, lashed out with all 4 of its massive limbs. The wagon inched closer to the edge, but it wasn't fast enough. Sunny ran to the back of the wagon and threw his weight against it. Push harder, he bellowed at his companions. The wagon's rear wheels finally tipped over the edge, the entire contraption teetering precariously. At that moment, Hero delivered one final blow, stunning the Mountain King just long enough for the chain to go taut. With a thunderous crash, the wagon plummeted, dragging the tyrant with it. The creature let out a guttural roar as it disappeared into the abyss, its 5 eyes fixed on Sunny until the very end. Sunny collapsed, his chest heaving. Is it over? He muttered to himself. The aftermath. The survivors gathered around the dying embers of the bonfire. Shifty and Scholar avoided Sunny's gaze, though Hero regarded him with newfound respect. The young soldier's calm demeanor seemed unshaken, despite the horrors they had just witnessed. We need to move, Hero announced. The Mountain King isn't dead. Shifty recoiled. What? It fell off a cliff. How can it not be dead? Sunny spoke softly, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. It's not the fall that kills. That Thing jumped down to this platform earlier without a scratch.
It'll be back.
Scholar nodded grimly.
He's right. We can't stay here.
The group scavenged supplies from the bodies of the dead, water, firewood, and warm
Clothing.
Sunny, in an unexpected moment of resolve, slit the throat of a dying soldier, a man who had once whipped him mercilessly, and claimed his fur cloak and boots.
The spell
Rewarded him with a memory, a small silver bell, though its purpose seemed laughably
insignificant.
The night passed in restless silence. Hero kept watch while the others huddled near the fire, too afraid to sleep. At dawn, they began their climb up the treacherous slope, seeking an old path that might lead them over the mountain.
The climb.
The ascent was grueling. Every step was a battle against exhaustion and the biting cold. Sunny lagged behind, his small frame burdened with the weight of supplies.
Shifty fared
Worse, his breathing grew ragged, his steps faltering. Eventually he collapsed, sliding back down the slope before coming to a gruesome stop. His lifeless body lay sprawled on the rocks, a grim reminder of the dangers they faced. Hero pressed on, showing no outward signs of distress. Scholar, though visibly shaken,
followed closely.
Sunny, too stubborn to give up, forced his trembling legs to keep moving. His mind wandered to the rewards promised by the spell, the aspect, the flaw, the first ability that would mark him as awakened. He clung to these thoughts, using them to drown out the pain coursing through his body. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner, and the cold intensified.
The sun sank low on
the horizon, casting long shadows over the jagged rocks. Hero finally called for a halt, finding a small alcove where they could rest for the night. They lit a fire, sharing a meager meal of roasted oxen meat before settling in for an uneasy sleep. The tyrant returns. Sunny awoke with a start, the faint crunch of bones echoing in his ears.
He crawled to the
edge of their shelter and peered down at the platform far below. There, bathed in moonlight, was the Mountain King. It had returned, dragging itself back onto the stone, its claws tearing into the bodies of the fallen. Sunny watched in horror as the creature devoured the corpses, its massive jaws crunching through flesh and bone. A small rock slipped from the ledge, tumbling noisily down the slope. The tyrant's head snapped up, its milky eyes locking onto Sunny's position. Sunny froze, his breath caught in his throat. After a tense moment, the creature turned away, continuing its grisly feast.
It's blind,
Sunny realized, a spark of hope igniting within him.
but hope was fleeting.
The Mountain King would soon finish its meal and come for them.
A grim decision. The crossroads.
Sunny stood motionless, gazing at the broken, lifeless body of Shifty far below.
The silence.
Among the survivors, Hero, Scholar, and himself was suffocating, weighed down by the unspoken truth that any one of them could easily meet the same fate.
Scholar broke the
silence first, his tone coldly pragmatic. "It's a good thing we took most of his supplies,"
he
muttered before quickly correcting himself with a forced expression of sympathy.
Sunny eyed
him warily, his instincts warning him against trusting the older man. The climb grew more grueling with each step. The thin air at this altitude made breathing a struggle, while the piercing cold gnawed at their resolve. Sunny cursed every decision that
had led him to this cursed mountain.
For hours, the three survivors pressed onward, the icy wind battering them mercilessly. Just as despair began to creep in, they stumbled upon a weathered narrow path carved into the black rock, a flat winding trail that seemed like
salvation.
They paused briefly, catching their breath. Scholar, visibly exhausted, dropped to the ground. But Sunny noticed something chilling. Shifty's body had vanished. Bloodstains on the jagged rocks marked where he had fallen, but his corpse was gone.
The implication was clear. The
monster was still following them. Scholar and Hero exchanged grim looks, their fear
palpable.
"We need to mislead it," Scholar suggested, his tone calculated.
"The scent of blood is
what's drawing it to us. One of us must be left behind as bait." Sunny felt a cold fury rise within him as Scholar proposed sacrificing him to the tyrant.
Hero
hesitated, his moral struggle evident. But just as Sunny's panic peaked, Hero turned the blade of Scholar's logic against him. "If someone must be sacrificed, it should be you,"
Hero
declared, his tone icy. Without hesitation, he incapacitated Scholar with brutal efficiency, breaking his legs and leaving him to be consumed by the beast.
The smell of blood.
Hero returned from abandoning Scholar, his demeanor unsettlingly calm. Sunny kept his distance, now acutely aware of Hiro's capacity for violence.
As the two pressed onward,
Hiro tried to reassure Sunny.
"Don't feel guilty," he said.
What happened was justice. Sunny, unimpressed by Hiro's self-righteousness, kept silent, his distrust deepening. The path led them higher, the air thinner and the cold more biting. The setting sun painted the world in crimson hues, but Sunny could only think of the frigid night ahead. When they found a small cave for shelter, Hiro advised against lighting a fire.
"The beast is too close," he warned.
In the darkness, Hiro's noble features appeared shadowed with sorrow.
Sunny
remained alert, refusing to let his guard down. "You're planning to kill me, aren't you?" Sunny finally asked, his voice laced with bitterness. Hiro didn't deny it, admitting his intention to spare Sunny the tyrant's wrath. Sunny's anger
erupted.
"Don't hide behind excuses,"
he spat.
"You're doing this because it's easy.
Because you want to survive."
Their tense confrontation was interrupted by Hiro's sudden collapse. Blood spilled from his mouth as he groaned in agony. Sunny smiled coldly. "Finally," he said. The poison Sunny had slipped into their water supplies days ago was taking effect.
"A poisonous plan."
Hiro struggled to comprehend Sunny's betrayal.
"You poisoned us," he choked out.
Sunny nodded, recounting his plan. "I mixed bloodbane into the water after the first attack. Shifty drank the most, Scholar suffered next, and now you." Hiro's shock turned to grim
determination.
"But I'm not like them," he growled, rising to his feet. "My awakened soul
core protects me."
Sunny's blood ran cold as Hiro's strength returned. The young soldier's sword flashed and Sunny barely escaped the cave, clutching his wounded side. He stumbled into the open air, the stars and moon illuminating the icy path. Hiro's voice rang out behind him.
"Stop running. You can't escape."
Sunny turned, holding up a small silver bell.
"You want me dead?
Let's see if you can handle
what's coming."
He rang the bell, its clear tone echoing across the mountain. Hiro's confusion turned to horror as the Mountain King emerged from the shadows behind him. The monstrous tyrant struck with devastating force, dragging Hiro into the abyss.
Sunny didn't look back. The summit.
Alone, battered and freezing, Sunny climbed the final stretch of the mountain.
Each step
was a battle against his failing body. When he reached the summit, a ruined temple loomed. Before him, its black marble columns etched with ancient symbols.
The sight filled Sunny
with grim satisfaction.
"I made it,"
he whispered, though there was no one left to hear him. The temple's altar, untouched by snow, seemed to beckon him. He stumbled inside, collapsing onto its cold surface. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the black marble, which absorbed it like a thirsty sponge. Sunny closed his eyes, ready to surrender to the eternal
sleep.
But his peace was short-lived. The Mountain King entered the temple, its blind eyes locked
onto him.
Sunny braced for the end, but the spell's voice rang out. "You have offered yourself as a sacrifice to the gods." Shadows surged from the temple's corners, ensnaring the Mountain King. The tyrant roared in defiance, but the divine power of the shadows tore it apart. Blood and viscera stained the temple floor as the beast was destroyed.
Shadow slave.
The spell transported Sunny to an otherworldly void filled with stars and silver threads, a glimpse into its intricate design. A voice boomed, announcing his rewards. "You have slain an awakened tyrant, Mountain King. Your trial is over.
Prepare for appraisal."
Sunny received a memory of the Mountain King's power, a boon beyond his wildest dreams. Then the ultimate revelation came. His aspect had evolved into Shadow Slave, a divine-ranked power. The spell's description sent shivers down his spine. "You are a miraculous shadow left behind by a dead god. As a divine shadow, you possess strange and wondrous powers but long to find a master." Sunny laughed bitterly. A divine aspect was a treasure coveted by the most powerful beings, but its innate ability to bind himself to a master felt like a cruel irony. Yet he vowed to keep his true name hidden, ensuring no one could exploit him. As the spell completed its appraisal, Sunny's body returned to the waking world. The nightmare was over, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. Rebirth and revelation. Sunny woke with a start, his chest burning with an unfamiliar energy. It wasn't pain but an overwhelming sensation of change, as though his very soul had been shaken awake. The feeling spread through him like wildfire, his body tingling with newfound strength and clarity. It was euphoric, a rebirth of sorts. He was no longer the frail street rat the world had beaten down. He was stronger now, faster, and ready to take on anything. As the transformation completed, the heat in his chest faded, replaced by a soothing cold. This chill washed over him, healing years of accumulated pain and wear.
For the first time, Sunny felt truly whole.
His vision split momentarily, revealing an otherworldly sea of calm. Darkness illuminated by a solitary black sun. This was his soul sea, a realm reflecting his
inner essence.
Yet, unlike others' vibrant and radiant soul seas, his was eerily dark and
lifeless.
Orbiting the black sun were two spheres of light, his memories, the silver bell and
Puppeteer's shroud.
The spell's voice interrupted his exploration, awakening aspect ability. Sunny held his
breath.
This was the moment that would define his future. The spell announced, aspect. Ability name, shadow control.
His true name, lost from light,
appeared alongside his rank, dreamer, and a peculiar
shadow core.
Unlike the typical soul cores most awakened possessed, this shadow core represented an entirely different progression path. Sunny realized that while this made him unique, it also brought uncertainties, especially regarding the mysterious shadow fragments he needed to collect. Exploring his aspect further, he discovered his shadow was alive, an independent entity, capable of moving, changing shape, and interacting with its environment. This revelation thrilled him but also raised countless questions about its true potential. However, his excitement was short-lived.
The spell's voice returned. All power has a price. You have received a flaw, clear conscience. The word struck Sunny like a blow. His flaw
meant he could not lie. For someone who thrived on deceit and manipulation, this was a catastrophe. Worse still, it jeopardized his ability to keep his true name secret, potentially making him a slave to anyone who learned it. Master Jet's watch. Sunny awoke in the real world to find himself in a secure room at the police station. The reinforced ceiling above felt like a sanctuary compared to the horrors of the nightmare. Relief flooded him as he realized he had survived. However, his reprieve was interrupted by the presence of a striking woman sitting nearby. Her raven black hair, icy blue eyes, and military uniform marked her as an ascended Master Jet. Their interaction was anything but smooth. Thanks to his flaw, Sunny blurted out embarrassing truths, earning a slap across the face. Despite this, Jet maintained her composure, congratulating him on surviving his first nightmare. She explained that as a sleeper, he was entitled to training and preparation before entering the dream realm again. Jet's advice was sharp and pragmatic. She warned him against sharing too much about his aspect and flaw, explaining that knowledge of these could be weaponized against him. Her second piece of advice was to focus on wilderness survival training, as the dream realm's harsh environment was just as deadly as its monsters. Finally, she urged him to forge alliances, as survival in the dream realm was impossible alone. The Academy Gates. Sunny arrived at the gates of the Awakened Academy, a massive fortress bristling with defenses. It was a legendary place where sleepers trained for their journey into the dream realm. Yet, as awe-inspiring as it was, Sunny felt out of place. His plain tracksuit and lack of personal belongings starkly contrasted with the polished, well-prepared sleepers around him. Among the new arrivals, one figure stood out, a tall, silver-haired girl with a detached air. Her sharp features and quiet confidence piqued Sunny's curiosity, though he kept his distance. Interactions, he knew, could lead to disaster thanks to his flaw. Jet's parting words echoed in his mind. Remember, no one survives the dream realm alone. It was a truth he couldn't ignore, though it clashed with his instinct to avoid others. A new social nightmare. Inside the academy, Sunny's flaw turned the induction ceremony into a personal trial. Conversations were unavoidable, and his inability to lie made every interaction a minefield. His blunt honesty alienated him from the other sleepers, earning him a reputation as a rude and arrogant misfit. Slaps and glares became routine as he struggled to navigate the social chaos. However, Sunny's ordeal wasn't entirely fruitless. Through painful trial and error he discovered a loophole in his flaw. While he couldn't lie, he could manipulate the truth by carefully choosing his words. This revelation was a game-changer, allowing him to craft misleading statements that sowed doubt and misdirection. Realizing the importance of keeping his true name hidden, Sunny devised a plan. He would play the role of a weak, unremarkable sleeper, someone unworthy of attention or suspicion. This act required precision and cunning, but Sunny was determined to make it work. Preparations for the Dream Realm. Over the following days, Sunny immersed himself in the Academy's training.
True to Jet's
advice, he prioritized wilderness survival, learning skills that would keep him alive in the Dream Realm's unforgiving environment. While others focused on combat and sorcery, Sunny honed his ability to find shelter, make fire, and navigate treacherous terrain. Despite his efforts, Sunny remained an outcast among his peers. The silver-haired girl, whose name he eventually learned was Cassie, was the only one who didn't openly despise him. Her quiet demeanor and enigmatic presence intrigued him, though their interactions
were limited.
As the weeks passed, Sunny grew stronger and more confident. His mastery over his shadow deepened, revealing its potential as both a tool and a weapon. Yet, the weight of his flaw loomed large, a constant reminder of the precarious balance he had to maintain. Crossing the threshold. The day of departure arrived. The sleepers gathered at the Academy's central plaza, their nerves and excitement palpable. The instructors, hardened veterans of the Dream Realm, gave final instructions, emphasizing the importance of teamwork and caution. Sunny stood apart from the group, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. As the spell's portal shimmered into existence, he felt a mix of dread and determination.
This was
it, the moment he had been preparing for. Cassie approached him, her silver eyes unreadable.
"Are you ready?"
she asked quietly. Sunny smirked, hiding his unease. "As ready as I'll ever be." Deception and discovery. Sunny stood amidst the group of sleepers, facing the smug, sharp-eyed caster. The others around them exchanged glances of confusion, curiosity, and amusement at Sunny's audacious claim of having acquired a divine aspect. Their skepticism was palpable, and
Sunny fed off it.
His act was carefully calculated. He needed them to underestimate him, to think of him as a weak, delusional fool, anything but a threat. "I killed an awakened tyrant in my first nightmare," Sunny declared with an exaggerated air of arrogance. He relished the laughter and disbelief that followed. Didn't even lift a finger. Just spat, and it was ripped apart. The sleepers erupted in laughter, calling him insane. Their reactions played perfectly into
Sunny's plan.
Every truthful yet absurd statement he made further convinced them he was
lying.
The moment they labeled him as harmless, his safety in the Academy was all but
assured.
Castor's expression remained neutral, his companions growing increasingly restless. Sunny's mocking grin only deepened. He left the conversation with a parting remark, ensuring no one would ever take him seriously. As he walked away, Castor's calm voice carried a chilling undertone. "Poor kid. He's lost his mind. He won't last long." Sunny couldn't suppress a smile. His deception had worked. Let them believe he was a lunatic. He'd reveal his true strength only when it mattered most. The blind girl and the outcasts. Returning to the corner of the hall, Sunny noticed the crowd keeping their distance from a solitary figure, a pale, delicate girl with an empty, expressionless gaze. She exuded a quiet sorrow, her blind eyes revealing the cost of her flaw. Sunny recognized her plight. Immediately, she was marked as one of the doomed, just like him. Her presence added a somber weight to the air, creating an invisible barrier between her and the other sleepers. Sunny hesitated before sitting at the far end of the bench she occupied. Her vulnerability unnerved him, a constant reminder of how cruel the spell could be. Still, they shared a common bond as outcasts, discarded by the others and left to fend for themselves. As he scanned the room, Sunny observed the unspoken social hierarchy among the sleepers. The legacies, with their air of confidence and superior training, occupied the front. Behind them stood the privileged scions of wealth and power. Then came the middle class sleepers, nervous but hopeful. Finally, there were the corpse, those deemed too weak or flawed to survive. And yet, the silver-haired girl Nephice stood apart from everyone, her posture relaxed as if she had nothing to prove. Sunny noted her indifference and filed it away. There was something about her that intrigued him. Awakened Rock's warning. The induction ceremony began with a speech from a towering bear-like man introduced as Awakened Rock. His deep, resonant voice commanded the sleepers' attention. His words were a brutal reminder of the reality they faced. The spell was merciless, and their survival depended entirely on their own strength and decisions. Rock explained the distinction between nightmares and the dream realm, emphasizing the latter's deadly unpredictability. There are no rules in the dream realm, he said gravely. No guarantees of fairness. You might face creatures far beyond your rank. Sunny listened intently, absorbing every detail. The instructor's warning about human-like nightmare creatures sent a chill down his spine. Rock concluded with a directive: stick together, reach the citadels and survive. The weight of his words settled over the crowd like a heavy fog. Sunny couldn't help but smirk to himself. With his luck, he'd likely land in the most dangerous, isolated part of the dream realm. But he wasn't worried. Adversity was his element. The first steps in the academy. Sunny followed the directions to his dormitory, surprised to find he'd been assigned a private room. The modest yet luxurious accommodations were a far cry from the streets he'd once called home. A soft bed, a private bathroom, and even new clothes. He marveled at the extravagance. Exploring his room, Sunny summoned the puppeteer's shroud. The dark, lightweight armor materialized around him, its design elegant and understated. The memory's description hinted at its origins, a cocoon left behind by a tyrannical creature. Sunny shuddered at the thought of what the Mountain King might have become if it had fully matured. Still, the shroud's enhanced protection and eerie calmness reassured him. It was a worthy reward for his ordeal. The rankings and Nephice. The cafeteria buzzed with excitement as the academy unveiled its rankings for the new sleepers. Sunny, unsurprised, found his name near the bottom. Only the blind girl, Kasha, ranked lower. However, it was the top of the list that drew the most attention. Nephice, the enigmatic silver-haired girl, stood above even the legacies, her true name displayed. Alongside her portrait, Changing Star. The room erupted into whispers. A sleeper with a true name was practically unheard of. The other sleepers stared at Nephice with awe and fear, though she seemed oblivious calmly. Sipping her coffee, Castor approached her, his tone deferential. Sunny watched their interaction, noting the strange tension between them. Did they know each other? Or was this a calculated display of respect? For Sunny, the ranking only reinforced his plan to remain underestimated. Let them believe he was weak, it was better that way. T. Julius and Wilderness Survival. Sunny's first class was Wilderness Survival, taught by the eccentric awakened Julius. The old man's lively demeanor and bushy eyebrows gave him an air of unpredictability. Sunny quickly realized he was the only student in the class. Julius dismissed the others as brutes, too focused on combat to value knowledge. The curriculum was overwhelming. Julius bombarded Sunny with lessons on survival, navigation, and even ancient languages. Despite the mental exhaustion, Sunny saw the value in the training. The dream realm was a deadly wilderness, and these skills could mean the difference between life and death. Julius shared a peculiar tidbit about Master Jet, describing her as a soul reaper feared for her ability to target soul cores directly. Sunny stored the information away, intrigued by the layers of mystery surrounding her. A glimpse of the future. As the days passed, Sunny immersed himself in his training. His interactions with the other sleepers remained sparse, though he occasionally shared a table with Kasha. Her presence, though unsettling, reminded him of the fragility of life within the spell. Nephice, meanwhile, continued to captivate the sleepers with her aloof demeanor and extraordinary ranking. Sunny watched her from a distance, his curiosity growing. What had she endured to earn her true name? And what secrets did she hide behind her calm exterior? For Sunny, the coming weeks promised challenges and revelations. He was determined to survive, to rise above the chaos and carve out his place in the dream realm. The shadow that followed him seemed to agree, its shifting form a constant reminder of the power he now wielded. Let's see what you can really do, Sunny muttered to his shadow, a sly grin spreading across his face. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to face it. Harnessing the shadow. Sunny stared at the floor of his dormitory, his mind buzzing with possibilities. The shadow trailing at his feet wasn't merely a passive companion, it was alive, an extension of himself. As he concentrated, his shadow detached from his body, sliding across the room like an obedient servant. For the first time, Sunny felt his mind split into two perspectives, one tethered to his physical body, the other through the shadow's ethereal form. He smirked, reveling in the eerie advantage this duality afforded him. I can see through its eyes, he muttered, testing the boundaries of his newfound ability.
His shadow slipped under
the door and roamed the halls, gliding between shadows unseen.
Sunny marveled at the
opportunities it presented. With his stealthy scout, he could gather information, spy on enemies and evade danger, all without risking his own neck. But as his shadow reached the girls' dormitory hallway, Sunny shook his head with a wry
grin.
Let's not turn into a complete degenerate, he murmured, pulling the shadow back. It returned, merging seamlessly with his body, a silent accomplice ready for whatever schemes
he devised next.
Changing star. The dojo buzzed with anticipation as the sleepers prepared for their first combat evaluations. Sunny, perched inconspicuously in the corner, directed his shadow to observe the
proceedings.
Instructor Rock announced the tests with his usual no-nonsense demeanor, and the sleepers lined up to display their physical strength against a reinforced punching
machine.
One by one, the sleepers threw their punches, numbers ranging from 10 to 16, appearing on the screen.
Sunny yawned.
Typical results for sleepers,
he muttered to himself. Then, Nephi stepped forward.
Her elegant yet unassuming appearance drew little
attention until she struck.
The machine trembled, displaying a 16. While impressive, it left Sunny curious. For someone with a true name, she didn't seem overly remarkable.
Castor followed.
His punch was a blur of motion, too fast for most to see.
The machine
displayed 21, a score that left the room awestruck. Sunny frowned, his keen eye catching the subtleties of Nephi's movements earlier. Despite her loss to Castor in sparring, she hadn't used her aspect. She's holding back, Sunny realized, his unease growing. Training and secrets. The weeks that followed were grueling. Sunny dedicated himself to survival training with Teacher Julius, mastering everything from celestial navigation to creating fire under impossible conditions. The lessons were rigorous, their depth unmatched. Sunny appreciated the effort, even as exhaustion pushed him to his limits. Meanwhile, Sunny's shadow became his most loyal asset. He sent it on reconnaissance missions, gathering tidbits about the other sleepers' aspects and flaws. Most of the time, the shadow returned with trivial gossip, but occasionally, it uncovered valuable insights. Sunny also experimented with enhancing objects using his shadow. It could augment his punches, reinforce armor, or sharpen blades, doubling their effectiveness. His personal growth was matched by intrigue surrounding Nephi's.
Through his shadows
observations, Sunny learned of her lineage. She was the sole survivor of the Immortal Flame clan, a family of legendary heroes. The revelation left Sunny simultaneously impressed and wary. If Nephi's was royalty, her calm demeanor belied a profound strength waiting to be unleashed. The last day. The winter solstice arrived, marking the sleeper's final day before entering the dream realm. Sunny woke with a sense of foreboding, the weight of his impending journey heavy
on his mind.
The day began like any other, but an encounter with Kasha, the blind girl, added an unsettling twist.
Happy birthday,
she said suddenly, her blind eyes fixed in his direction.
Sunny froze. How did she know that? He wondered.
Her cryptic presence unnerved him, and he quickly
excused himself.
Later that day, Instructor Rock led the sleepers to a chilling exhibit, the hollow
rows of
lifeless individuals sat in wheelchairs, their blank faces a haunting reminder of the spell's
cruelty.
These were sleepers and awakened who failed.
Rock explained. If you're lucky, death will be the end. If not, you'll end up like them.
The warning resonated with Sunny. Failure wasn't an option, not for someone who had fought tooth and nail to reach this point. He resolved to survive, no matter what the dream realm threw at him.
The starless void.
When the spell transported Sunny to the dream realm, he was plunged into an abyss.
Salty
water choked him as he flailed in total darkness, disoriented and terrified.
His shadow helped
him discern up from down, guiding him to the surface. Gasping for air, he found himself in an endless ocean under a starless sky. A massive dorsal fin appeared on the horizon, rapidly closing in. Panic surged through Sunny as the enormous creature approached, its size defying comprehension. Desperation fueled his strokes as he swam toward a floating black mass. His shadow enveloped him, enhancing his speed just enough to escape the creature's jaws. Scrambling onto the rocky platform, Sunny watched in horror as a colossal tentacle emerged from the depths, dragging the predator away. The sea fell silent once more, its surface eerily calm. Even monsters fear what lies beneath. Sunny realized, his body trembling. The platform, no more than 12 meters across, was his only refuge. Cold and naked, Sunny summoned the puppeteer's shroud to cover himself, its dark fabric offering warmth and protection. He sat in the center, staring into the endless void. This place, he whispered, is unlike anything I've seen. As the black sea undulated around him, Sunny waited. Hours passed before the horizon began to lighten. A pale sun rose, casting its faint glow over the void. The calm sea surged violently, heralding the arrival of something massive. Sunny clenched his fists, ready to face whatever nightmare awaited him. A labyrinth beneath the sea. Sunny awoke to an eerie transformation of the world around him. The black sea that had consumed his senses during the night had receded entirely, revealing a vast, alien landscape. The towering coral formations, glistening red under the pale morning sun, stretched endlessly across a labyrinth of jagged cliffs and treacherous pathways. His small stone platform had turned into the summit of a colossal statue, its headless body carved with intricate armor and a massive sword planted firmly in the ground. "Where am I?" Sunny muttered, his voice trembling with both awe and unease. The sheer scale of the statue and the monstrous coral maze made him feel insignificant. But staying still was not an option. His dwindling supplies and the returning tide guaranteed death if he didn't act. Summoning his shadow, Sunny sent it to explore the labyrinth. The silent, weightless entity slipped through the coral maze, mapping the terrain while Sunny remained safely perched atop the statue. The coral paths were convoluted, some leading into dark tunnels while others spiraled into dead ends. Despite its dexterity, the shadow struggled to navigate the alien terrain effectively. As it scouted, Sunny noticed a horrifying scene. The massive carcass of the shark-like predator he'd encountered before lay half-consumed in the maze below. Around it swarmed a horde of grotesque pincer monsters, their insectoid bodies ripping and devouring chunks of flesh. "Great," he whispered, watching them with dread. "At least now I know what's waiting for me down there." The Headless Knight's secret. Sunny's exploration revealed more about the statue he had unwittingly taken refuge on. What appeared to be a cliff was, in fact, the body of an ancient knight carved from stone. 7 stars adorned its chest plate, symbolizing unknown legends. The massive sword it held was buried deep into the ground, while the platform Sunny stood on was revealed to be the knight's severed neck. The head was conspicuously absent, its removal suggesting an act of destruction rather than decay. As the tide returned with the night, Sunny watched the labyrinth flood once more. The pincer monsters scattered, hiding in the coral or burying themselves in the mud. By dawn, the maze was silent, save for the distant crash of waves. Sunny knew time was against him. Staying atop the statue ensured temporary safety but condemned him to starvation and thirst. He had no choice but to descend. The journey begins. Using his shadow's guidance and the survival skills taught by teacher Julius, Sunny climbed down the statue, carefully navigating its massive grooves. Once on solid ground, the mud beneath his feet proved difficult to traverse, clinging to his legs and slowing his progress. Despite the danger, the act of moving toward something, even the distant hill crowned with coral, filled him with renewed purpose. Sunny's shadow scouted ahead, occasionally climbing the coral to assess potential paths. It was slow, grueling work, but he managed to avoid the clusters of pincer monsters still feasting on the shark carcass. However, his confidence wavered when the mud in front of him shifted. A massive pincer burst from the ground, narrowly missing him as he fell backward. The carapace scavenger. The creature emerged, a hulking amalgamation of insect and nightmare. Its segmented legs ended in scythe-like claws, its torso bristling with chitinous armor. Missing one pincer and heavily scarred, the scavenger's injuries only added to its ferocity. Sunny barely avoided its attacks, using every ounce of his agility and training to evade the creature's relentless strikes. As the scavenger cornered him, Sunny spotted a sharp bone protruding from the mud. With a desperate lunge, he grabbed it, turning the object into a makeshift spear. His mind raced as he formulated a plan. The monster's carapace was nearly impenetrable, but it's damaged. I offered a glimmer of hope. Feigning weakness, Sunny allowed the creature to grab him with its remaining pincer. As the pressure on his ribs grew unbearable, he summoned his shadow to reinforce his armor. In a final, desperate move, Sunny drove the bone spear into the scavenger's eye, twisting it with all his strength. The creature collapsed, its monstrous body finally still. The spell's voice echoed in his mind, "You have slain an awakened beast, Carapace. Scavenger. You have received a memory, Azure Blade. Your shadow grows stronger." Sunny fell to the ground, exhausted yet victorious. He examined his prize, a sleek, azure-colored blade that shimmered faintly with white sparks. The weapon felt balanced and deadly in his hands. More importantly, the shadow fragments he absorbed from the fight confirmed that his strength was tied directly to the enemies he defeated. A chance encounter. After scavenging meat from the creature's corpse and storing it in a makeshift seaweed bag, Sunny continued toward the coral hill. His progress was slow, his body battered and his leg injured from the fight. Each step brought him closer to his goal, but the labyrinth grew increasingly disorienting. He relied heavily on his shadows scouting to avoid dead ends and potential ambushes. Then, as he rounded a corner, he saw them: Nephice, the silver-haired changing star, and Kasha, the blind oracle. Nephice, dressed in crude seaweed garments, held a golden rope that guided Kasha through the maze. The two moved with an air of calm determination there, contrasting appearances surreal against the crimson coral backdrop. Sunny hesitated, unsure how to approach them. His reputation from the academy as a misfit and a fool made him wary of their reaction. Summoning his shadow, he commanded it to wave at the pair, a gesture meant to announce his presence without alarming them. Nephice immediately drew her sword, her sharp gaze cutting through the shadows. Kasha's pale face twisted in confusion. "What is it doing?" Kasha asked. Nephice's voice was steady. "It's waving." Sunny stepped out of the shadows, raising his hands in surrender. "I'm not a threat," he said, his tone light but cautious. "I just didn't want you to stab me before realizing I'm human." Allies in the labyrinth. Nephice regarded him with suspicion, her sword still drawn. Kasha, however, recognized his voice. "It's Sunless," she said, her tone soft. "From the cafeteria." Nephice's expression shifted, and she lowered her weapon slightly. "You survived a scavenger?" she asked, her disbelief evident. Sunny smirked, pointing to his bag of meat. "I didn't just survive. I killed it." The revelation earned him a nod of approval from Nephice, though her guarded demeanor remained. After some discussion, Sunny learned that the two had been sheltering on the coral hill and were planning to return. Grateful for the chance to join them, he fell into step behind the pair, his shadow trailing silently. As the trio moved through the labyrinth, Sunny felt a strange sense of camaraderie forming. For the first time since entering the dream realm, he wasn't alone. Though his path remained fraught with danger, the presence of allies gave him hope. Together they would face whatever horrors awaited in the Crimson Maze. Survival and shadows. Sunny followed Nephice and Kasha through the Crimson Labyrinth. Each step was marked by the eerie crunch of coral underfoot and the relentless echo of the black tide growing distant. Nephice led with confidence, her golden rope memory extending and retracting with each maneuver. Kasha clung to the other end, her cautious steps revealing her vulnerability. Sunny watched silently, weighing the odds of survival with a blind girl in their group. He wondered what drove Nephice to burden herself in such a perilous place. Compassion seemed an unlikely answer for someone so hardened. They reached a tall coral hill just as the sun threatened to set. Nephice deftly scaled the mound using her enchanted rope, its length magically expanding to suit her needs. Sunny followed, nervously gripping the rope, half expecting her to cut it mid-climb. He dismissed the thought, recognizing that if Nephice wanted him dead, she would have already acted. Finally, Kasha joined them, hoisted effortlessly by Nephice's strength. Atop the coral mound, a small campsite awaited them: seaweed bedding, drying scavenger meat, and a carefully constructed fire pit. Sunny pointed to it with curiosity. "Was it your firelight I saw the other night?" Kasha grimaced. "Yes. But it was a mistake. The light attracted scavengers and worse. We barely survived." Sunny glanced at the blackened coral. He had been lucky not to attempt to fire himself. The night encroached, bringing back the shadowy tides. Nephice kindled a small flame to cook the scavenger meat Sunny had brought, the rich aroma filling the air. They shared a meal in tense silence, broken only by the occasional crash of waves in the distance. Unlikely allies. As darkness enveloped them, the trio introduced themselves formally. Kasha smiled softly. I'm Cassie. Nephice, always guarded, replied simply, Neph. Sunny hesitated, his flaw urging truth. He settled for a lie by omission. I'm Sunless. But you can call me Sunny. Under the cover of night, Sunny proposed sharing their abilities and memories. The suggestion was logical, ensuring they could coordinate in battle. He started first, revealing his affinity with shadows and the independent nature of his shadow scout. Kasha listened with fascination, though her pale cheeks flushed as she realized his shadow could have spied on them in the academy. Kasha revealed her ability to see attributes and experience sporadic visions of the future or past. Sunny's unease deepened. Her insight was limited but still dangerous if directed at him. Her memories included a wooden staff that created wind and an enchanted bottle that provided endless water, invaluable in the dream realm. Nephice shared selectively. Her affinity for light and fire and her healing ability intrigued Sunny, though he suspected she withheld critical details. Her memories, a rope that could change length and a sword resistant to soul attacks, spoke to her practical nature. Sunny marveled at the trio's combined resources but recognized their fragile trust. Shadows of the past. Sleep eluded Sunny that night. The gentle sound of waves clashing against the coral reminded him of simpler times, of blackouts that had forced his family to gather and share stories. Those memories comforted him, but the reality of the dream realm kept intruding. He watched Nephice, her silver hair gleaming in the faint light, and finally broke the silence. Why burden yourself with Cassie? Nephice's response was disarming in its simplicity. Because I want to. Sunny blinked. Her answer defied his understanding of survival in a merciless world. She wasn't calculating a benefit or fulfilling an obligation, she was choosing kindness, an act Sunny found foreign. This mentality set her apart, and he began to see why she inspired loyalty. Their conversation shifted when Nephice recounted the legend of Odysseus. She described the cunning hero's trials, his imprisonment by the goddess Calypso, and his eventual escape. Her question lingered. Why had Odysseus left paradise to wander the treacherous seas? Sunny guessed. Maybe he missed home? Nephice smiled faintly, her expression unreadable. Far away from home. Perhaps. A prophetic vision. At dawn, Cassie awoke with excitement. I had a vision, she announced, her voice trembling with hope. She described a ruined city surrounded by walls, with a castle at its heart, brimming with awakened. Sunny, you led me through its gates. We'll make it. Her revelation buoyed Sunny's spirits momentarily, but her description unnerved him. She hadn't mentioned Nephice in the vision. The omission gnawed him, though he kept it to himself. Nephice, however, nodded calmly. We go west. The decision was fraught with peril. Sunny knew the western path teemed with scavengers, but he also understood the futility of waiting. Together, they prepared to leave the safety of the Coral Hill, Sunny taking charge of guiding Cassie while his shadow scouted ahead. Scavenger Tactics. The labyrinth stretched endlessly, its crimson coral walls closing in like a living maze. Sunny's shadow alerted him to a pack of scavengers ahead, 6 hulking creatures moving in their direction. He relayed the information to Nephice, who decided to skirt around them. Yet, their detours only delayed the inevitable. By mid-afternoon, they faced an unavoidable confrontation. Nephice devised a plan with calculated precision. Scavengers have 3 weak points: their joints, the base of their carapace, and a small cavity on their back. I'll distract it, expose the weak point, and you'll deliver the killing blow. Sunny hesitated. Fighting a scavenger was suicide, but Nephice's confidence emboldened him. When a lone scavenger appeared in a clearing, Nephice sprang into action. Her graceful movements belied the raw strength behind her attacks. She danced around the monster, striking at its joints while avoiding its deadly pincers. Sunny watched, his heart pounding as she maneuvered the beast, forcing it to turn its back to him. Now, she shouted. Sunny lunged, his shadow enhancing his leap as he drove the azure blade into the creature's vulnerable spot. The scavenger convulsed, its grotesque body collapsing in a heap. Sunny landed heavily, breathless but alive. The spell's voice echoed in his mind. You have slain an awakened beast, carapace scavenger. Your shadow grows stronger.
A glimmer of hope. The victory bolstered their morale, but Sunny knew the challenges ahead would only grow more daunting. Cassie's vision of a sanctuary offered hope, but the path westward remained fraught with danger. As they regrouped, Nephi's steady gaze met his, a silent promise of survival shared between unlikely allies. For Sunny, trust was still an unfamiliar concept. But for now, he was willing to follow Nephi's and Cassie, their fragile bond forged in the crucible of the dream realm. Strength in numbers. Sunny sprawled in the mud, staring at the sky, catching his breath after the battle with a scavenger. To his amazement, the fight had lasted less than 10 seconds. No one was injured or dead, except for the scavenger, whose armored corpse now lay still. He checked his shadow fragments, 16/1000. Master Jet's words echoed in his mind. No one survives the dream realm alone. Sunny, who had prided himself on self-sufficiency, now saw the truth in her statement. Together with Nephi's, their combined efforts had made the fight effortless. Alone, it might have been his last. Walking to Nephi's, he noted her makeshift seaweed clothes slightly torn but otherwise intact. She seemed unbothered, focused instead on the dead scavenger. Without hesitation, she broke its carapace and retrieved a soul shard, tossing it to Sunny. "Why are you giving it to me?" he asked, surprised. Nephi's shrugged. "I don't have pockets." The simplicity of her response left him momentarily speechless. Combat precision. Over the course of the day, the trio fought and defeated 3 more scavengers using the same method. Nephi served as bait, while Sunny delivered the killing blow with the azure blade. Cassie remained safely hidden, trusting her companions to protect her. Despite the efficiency of their tactics, Sunny couldn't help but marvel at Nephi's precision. She fought without using her aspect ability, relying entirely on skill and combat instincts. Her movements were fluid and deliberate, each action calculated to manipulate the mindless beasts. It was a stark reminder to Sunny that raw power paled in comparison to experience and mastery. Though his divine aspect granted him strength, speed, and the invaluable shadow, he knew he was leagues behind Nephi's in combat expertise. At the end of the day, the group sat on the statue's platform. Sunny produced the spoils, 4 shimmering soul shards. Nephi's divided them equally, giving 2 to Sunny and 1 to Cassie, keeping the remainder for herself. Sunny, however, made an unexpected move. Pushing his share toward Nephi's, he said, "Take them." Nephi's raised an eyebrow. "Don't you want to grow stronger?" Sunny smirked. "Of course I do. But you're the main fighter. The stronger you are, the better. Our chances of survival." Her silver eyes studied him for a moment before she nodded. "Fine. But what's the catch?" "In return," Sunny replied, "teach me how to fight." The essence of combat. Nephi's began Sunny's training with a lesson that night. Combat mastery has 2 aspects. Body and mind, she explained. The body is trained through repetition and experience. Your technique must become instinctual, ingrained in your muscles and bones. Sunny nodded, absorbing her words. Her demonstration of a proper strike revealed how power was generated not just from the hands but from the entire body. Nephi's corrected his form patiently, ensuring he understood every detail. But it was her insight into the mental aspect of combat that left a lasting impression. "The essence of combat is murder," she declared coldly. "You are trying to kill your enemy and they are trying to kill you. Everything else, style, weapons, intent, is secondary. All that matters is being the last one standing." Sunny spent the night reflecting on her words. The clarity she described resonated deeply with him, aligning with his own life experiences. Survival, after all, had always been his priority. Cassie's vision. The next morning, Cassie shared a troubling dream. Her visions, typically clear and prophetic, were now fragmented and ominous. She described a boundless darkness behind 7 seals, a castle consumed by fire, and a dying angel atop a crimson spire guarded by 7 severed heads. Sunny and Nephi's exchanged uneasy glances. The imagery was cryptic, foreboding, and unlike Cassie's previous visions. Sunny tried to comfort her, suggesting it might have been a nightmare, though he doubted his own words. Deep down, he felt the vision held weight, a warning of dangers yet to come. Monsters in the labyrinth. The labyrinth proved increasingly perilous as the scavengers multiplied,
their feast on the shark carcass nearing its end. Nephi's decided they would leave the statue before nightfall, determined to put distance between themselves and the growing horde. As they descended into the maze, Sunny's shadow scouted ahead, alerting them to dangers. Despite their precautions, a confrontation became inevitable when a group of scavengers blocked their path. Nephi devised a daring plan, trusting Sunny to finish one beast while she handled the other. The battle was swift and chaotic. Nephi's skill allowed her to outmaneuver one scavenger, while Sunny struck the other's weak point with the azure blade. Together, they triumphed. Though the fight left Sunny rattled, he realized how heavily their survival depended on Nephi's unwavering confidence and skill. The Crimson Guardians. At the base of the labyrinth, the carcass of the shark revealed two enormous luminescent crystals, transcendent soul shards. But before the trio could consider retrieving them, two towering monsters emerged. These creatures, larger and more menacing versions of scavengers, exuded an aura of intelligence and danger. The monsters claimed the shards and disappeared into the labyrinth, their departure sending waves of unease through the group. Nephi decided against pursuing them, instructing Sunny to send his shadow to track their movements instead. Resolve. As the group prepared for another arduous day, Sunny reflected on their tenuous alliance. He saw strength in their unity, yet he knew the path ahead would test them further. For now, they pressed on, their shared goal pulling them through the Crimson Maze and its lurking horrors. The storm and the awakening. The labyrinth had always been a place of peril, but Sunny, Nephi, and Cassie were rapidly learning just how little control they had over their circumstances. After safely hiding Cassie, Sunny and Nephi advanced to face two scavengers blocking their path. Nephi's fearless charge was as breathtaking as it was reckless. She moved like a bolt of lightning, throwing herself headlong into danger with a speed and agility that seemed almost inhuman. Sunny, struggling to keep up, watched in awe as Nephi executed a daring maneuver, sliding under the scavengers to outpace their pincers. Her sword struck with precision and ferocity, cleaving through their armor. Sunny joined the fray with the azure blade, yet his initial strike missed its mark, sliding harmlessly off the scavenger's carapace. Thrown against the wall, Sunny was momentarily winded but quickly recovered. With Nephi fighting one scavenger, Sunny confronted the other. Channeling his shadow to enhance his strength, he severed one of the creature's legs and delivered a killing blow, plunging his blade into its maw. As the battle ended, Sunny found Nephi victorious but wounded. Her improvised clothing had torn in the fight, forcing an awkward and silent exchange between them. Though embarrassed, Sunny focused on retrieving Cassie. When they regrouped, Nephi casually examined Sunny's wounds, deeming them non-critical. However, the spell revealed an unexpected reward. Sunny had earned his first echo, a rare beast-like entity bound to his soul. Harnessing new power, Sunny summoned the echo of the scavenger into his sea of souls. It materialized as a shadowy beast, awaiting his command. With this newfound power, Sunny realized that the echo could transform into a shadow at the cost of fragments, though he decided to save his resources for later. For now, the scavenger echo could serve as a mount or aid in battle. Cassie hesitated when Sunny proposed riding the echo, but she ultimately agreed. The group resumed their journey with increased speed. The echo carried Cassie, while Sunny and Nephi jogged alongside, avoiding unnecessary battles. However, their brief respite ended when Cassie sensed an unnatural disturbance in the labyrinth. Rain began to fall as dark clouds gathered with alarming speed, heralding the arrival of a storm. Nephi and Sunny immediately understood the gravity of the situation. The rising sea would soon flood the labyrinth. They had no choice but to sprint toward the cliffs in the distance. Cassie clung to the echo as Sunny and Nephi forged ahead, battling both exhaustion and the raging elements. Surviving the flood. The storm escalated rapidly. Torrential rain blurred their vision, while fierce winds buffeted their bodies. As the sea water rose, scavengers panicked, abandoning their nests to burrow underground. The group pressed on, determined to reach the cliffs before the storm swallowed them whole. When they finally reached the cliffs, the raging tide was nearly upon them. With no time to lose, Sunny dismissed the echo and helped Nephi secure Cassie to her back with the golden rope. They began the grueling climb, scaling the slippery rocks as the black torrent surged beneath them. Just as the water reached Sunny's shoulders, he slipped, nearly swept away by the current. A golden rope from Nephi saved him, pulling him to safety. Together, they reached the top, collapsing in exhaustion as the storm raged around them. The death trap. As they rested on the cliff, Sunny's shadow alerted him to something amiss. Exploring the area, he discovered 8 dead scavengers scattered across the plateau. Each corpse bore massive wounds, their unbreakable carapaces cleaved apart with ease. Sunny's earlier sense of relief turned to dread when he realized what this meant. Something far more powerful than scavengers was nearby. His fears were confirmed when he spotted the killer, a monstrous, awakened beast lurking beneath a rocky ridge. The creature's jagged carapace and scythe-like limbs marked it as one of the predators they had seen earlier collecting soul shards. The 3 of them were trapped on the cliff with this terrifying foe. Sunny returned to Nephi and Cassie, explaining the situation. Nephi, ever resolute, declared they had no choice but to confront the monster. Sunny protested, pointing out the vast difference in power between a sleeper and an awakened beast. But Nephi's unwavering logic won out. The darkness was their only advantage, and waiting until sunrise would leave them exposed. Cassie, despite her usual quiet demeanor, added a critical insight. The beast was powerful, but they were intelligent. Strategy, not brute strength, would be their greatest weapon. The plan and the fight. Sunny, Nephi, and Cassie devised a daring plan to use the element of surprise. With his shadow to guide him, Sunny would launch the first attack, while Nephi and the Echo would provide support. The battle had to be swift and precise, leaving no room for error. Under cover of darkness, Sunny approached the beast. His heart pounded as he drew closer, the monster's formidable silhouette looming in the shadows. He struck with the azure blade, aiming for the weak points in its armor. The initial attack stunned the creature, but it retaliated with terrifying speed, its scythe-like limbs slicing through the air. Nephi joined the fray, her silver sword flashing as she darted around the beast. The Echo, summoned by Sunny, engaged the monster head-on, absorbing its ferocious blows. Working in perfect tandem, the trio exploited every opening, chipping away at the beast's defenses. The battle reached its climax when Nephi launched a daring maneuver, distracting the creature long enough for Sunny to strike its vulnerable underside. With a final, desperate thrust, the azure blade pierced the beast's heart. The monster convulsed and fell, its massive body crashing to the ground. Aftermath and resolve. Exhausted and battered, the group stood victorious. The beast's death marked a turning point in their journey, a testament to their resilience and teamwork. Sunny, still shaken, realized how much he had grown. The Echo and his shadow powers had given him an edge, but it was their unity that had secured their survival. As dawn broke, the storm subsided, revealing a clear path forward. Though the challenges ahead remained daunting, the group's hard-won victory filled them with newfound determination. Together, they would face whatever the dream realm had in store, one step at a time.